Welcome to session 8 of Do We Agree, as we unpack and we're looking at what does Islam's most trusted sources have to say about itself. Throughout this whole series, we've used the Quran 33:21, where it says that Muhammad is the perfect example for mankind. There has certainly been for you in the messenger of Allah, Muhammad, an excellent pattern for anyone whose hope is in Allah. And so at the core of Islam are two things, the Quran and Muhammad. And we've gone kind of from the Quran onto Muhammad. We looked in open session 7 with Quran 65:4 and looking at Imam Bukhari's kind of discussion of this. In chapter 39, in Surah 54, it says, Allah the Almighty said, and those of your young women as have passed the age, and those of your women, not young women, and those of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them is the prescribed period, and that's that time that they had to wait in order to marry them, to make sure they weren't pregnant. If you have doubts about their period, is 3 months. And for those who haven't started their courses, i.e. their little girls, their prescribed period is 3 months likewise. So embodied in the Quran is this idea of both prepubescent, it's by implicitly stating those who are able to get pregnant, and then postmenopausal. Narrated Aisha, this is the wife of Mohammad, the prophet married me when I was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when I was 9. When we look at some of the big kind of tensions that are happening in the world, we talked briefly about this night journey that Muhammad said that he had going from kind of where he was all the way to Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, he goes up to heaven and has this narration with these other prophets. But what I wanted to focus on this week, we mentioned it before, is one, does Muhammad tell the truth? And then what does he say about that journey? And then what are the implications of this in his teaching? We learned that even though he said he took this magical steed there, if we go back and ask one of his wife said the body of Muhammad was not missing. So he was only taken there by spirit. He never went on this journey. If he never went on this journey, then why have all of this conflict in Jerusalem? Aisha, this is recorded in Ibn Ishaq. Aisha, the prophet's wife, used to say, the body remained where it was, but God removed his spirit by night. On this trip is where he said, I looked into the fire, into hell, and saw the majority of its inhabitants are women. The first part of this session, we are going to see, and I want you to put and kind of have an understanding now. You're a Muslim woman. Maybe you're a young Muslim girl. And I want you to put on the glasses of the worldview of what is it like to be a woman, a young female, or a married female in Islam today. Remember, Muhammad, his example is for now, and the things we're going to be reading about in the Quran are for eternity as well. Muhammad would say, and let's look at whether or not he would tell the truth, the prophet, peace be upon him, used to visit all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives at the time. This sounds like, some kind of just bravado, great man. And so he reported that he had the strength of 30 men. And again, in Muslim, it says he would go around to all his wives in one night. However, when we look at also the Sahih, or the authentic sources, and we ask his wife, what is the truth? She said, the prophet used to go around, it's in the next one. Narrate Aisha, magic was worked on Muhammad so that he used to think he had sexual relation with all his wives when he actually had not. So here we see she is claiming, kind of like almost making an excuse for him, he was bewitched. I would posit that he was just lying. And if ye fear, this is the rule today. This is in 2024, if you went to England, Indonesia, all of these Islamic areas, this is Sharia law for Muslims. And if you fear that you cannot deal fairly by the orphans, marry of the woman who seemed good to you. 2, 3, or 4. And if ye fear you cannot do justice to so many, then 1. Or the captives your right hand possesses. So the Quran is laying out a Muslim man today can have 4 wives, plus he can have sex slaves. That's what right hand possess means. This, however, didn't apply to Muhammad. Muhammad, as enshrined in the Quran, it was rules for his people. He had different rules. So it says, O prophet, we have made lawful for you your wives to whom you have paid their dowries, as well as slaves whom your right hand possesses, whom Allah has given you, and you are allowed to marry the daughters of your paternal uncles and aunts, the daughters of your maternal uncles and aunts who have immigrated like you. Also allowed for marriage is a believing woman who offers herself to the prophet without dowry if he's interested in marrying her. This is exclusively for you, not for the rest of the believers. So here he is taking things for himself that he wouldn't even allow. What we would call that today is being a hypocrite. If I say there's something only I can do because I have special status, but of course you can't do it, that's how we would label that. After Khadijah dies, we see recorded over and over again. And when you interact with Muslims, they'll say, oh, this isn't true. There's no way that this has happened. This is what I've even been told. Muhammad didn't marry a 6-year-old. And so a simple question for them is, do I believe you or do I believe Imam Bukhari? Do I believe Imam Muslim? Look at the original sources. Last week we touched on this, and I also want people to understand, what is it like to be a 9-year-old girl? She ends up dying. Muhammad dies when she's still basically an older teenager. And listen to what Muhammad tells her. You were shown to me twice in my dream before I married you. I saw an angel carrying you like a silken piece of cloth. I said to him, uncover her, and behold, it was you. I said to myself, if this is from Allah, it must happen. So we see this kind of manipulation, and we see this played out even further than that. And this is important to understand in the realm of human trafficking, because we often are told when we see an atrocity, is this the real Islam? And they'll say, this isn't Islam. This is a perverted view of what Islam is. And so I asked myself, according to Muslims, is the Quran the eternal word of Allah? If it is, then why is that a corrupted version? If Muhammad is the ultimate example, then why is someone following his example the fake Islam? And so we're going to unpack that a little bit. And so we see many times that even Muhammad's own men had a better kind of decorum of war than Muhammad had. They were like, are you sure that we should be doing these things? Muhammad sent a military expedition. They met their enemy and fought them. They defeated them and took captive. Some of the companions of the apostle of Allah were reluctant to have intercourse with the female captives in the presence of their husband, who are unbelievers. So Muhammad says, this is what Allah says, the exalted, sitting down the Quranic verse. And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hand possess. And so here's even Muhammad's men are like, I don't know if we should be doing this. And Muhammad's like, nope, that's great. And again, this is mentioned twice in Bukhari, or 3 times in Bukhari, twice in Muslim. O Allah's messenger, we have female captives as our booty. We are interested in their prices. They didn't want to get the females captives pregnant. They were worth less money. What is your opinion about coitus interruptus? The prophet said, do you really do that? It's better not to do it. No soul which Allah is destined to exist, but will surely come into existence. His thing was, who really cares? The idea was there's going to be plenty of female captives. And so in the Quran, in Surah 70, 23, 4, 33, last week we said over and over again, this is not just described, but prescribed in there. Zainab, we looked at this really from session 1, this first cousin of Muhammad, who he lusted after and took as his wife, and the reason that there's no adoption in Islam. And it says, we joined her in marriage to thee in order that in the future there may be no difficulty of the believers in matter of marriage with wives of their adopted sons. And then we said, well, this is a big problem for genetics because now in Sharia law, so many first cousin marriages, 70% of the marriages in Pakistan are what are called consanguineous, to a close relative. Out of those 70, 80% of marriages are to first cousins. And that has resulted in a lot of problems. We read in Al-Tabari, the messenger of Allah, Muhammad, attacked this village while they were unaware. One of the most common lies about Muhammad is he only fought defensive wars. He only fought when he was attacked. But listen to the most trusted sources. He attacked when they're unaware. At a watering place, he killed their warriors and took their women and children captive. Among the captives was this gal. We'll call her Jay. Her husband, it says, was slaughtered that day. Aisha tells this story. This is one of Muhammad's wives. When the messenger of Allah divided the captives, Jay fell share to this Thabit. She was a very beautiful woman. This is one of Muhammad's wives, the young one talking. Most attractive to the eye. She came to Muhammad seeking his help in the purchase of her freedom. As she stood at the door of the mosque, Aisha looked at her with disapproval, realizing that Muhammad would see her the way I saw her, that she was beautiful, and she knew the character of Muhammad. Think about that. A wife sees a beautiful woman. She knows that if her husband sees that beautiful woman, what's going to happen? And so she says, I looked at her with disapproval, realizing that Muhammad would see her as I see her. Then Jay says, oh, Muhammad, I am Jay, daughter of the person there, the chief of his people. You are aware of my plight. I have fallen to another man, and I have made an agreement to purchase my freedom, so please help me. Muhammad said, would you like something better than that? I will discharge your debt and marry you. She said, yes. He said, then I will do it. The news spread that Muhammad had married Jay, and the people said, these captives are now the relatives of Muhammad. So they're set free captives. They set free that kind of all the village of the people that hadn't been slaughtered, and 100 households were freed because of her marriage. And so I think of the bravery of this young woman in order to do that. And I think of really the despicable nature of somebody who would attack people who were unaware. Another one of Muhammad's wives is Safiya. And there's much written about Safiya. Muhammad had come along with his army. He had conquered Khaybar and took captives, and the booty was collected. Dia was one of his soldiers, came and said, Muhammad, give me a slave girl from the captives. The prophet said, go take any slave girl, and he took Safiya. Safiya at this time was a teenager. Allah, the majestic and glorious, defeated them, and this is from Muslim, the previous was Bukhari, and there fell to the lot of Dia a beautiful girl. And Allah's messenger got her in exchange of 7 heads. And so we see that something happened here where Dia was supposed to get this girl, and now Dia gets 7 people, 7 slaves, but he gets Safiya, and let's see why. Safiya's husband is Kenana. Kenana, who had been custody of the treasure, he was a treasurer for this village, was brought to Muhammad, who asked him about it. So they take this village, and some of the people go, hey, this is the treasure. They bring him to Muhammad. Muhammad goes, where's the treasure? And a Jew from his village came to Muhammad and said that he had seen Kiana going round a certain ruin early in the morning. When the apostle said to Kiana, do you know if we find you have it, I shall kill you? And Kiana says, yes. The apostle gives orders that the ruin was to be excavated and some of the treasure was found. When he asked about the rest, he refused to produce it. So the apostle gave orders to one of his soldiers, torture him until you extract what he has. So he kindled a fire of flint and steel on his chest until he was nearly dead. Then the apostle delivered him to another guy named Mohammad, and he beheaded him. So here you see this young Jew has a fire built on his chest. He survives it, doesn't want to give up the village's money, and Muhammad tries to extract it. He doesn't get it. The Jew who had the fire on is the husband of Sophia, okay? Now, Muhammad sees how beautiful Sophia is when she's brought by Dia, and he goes, I want her to be my wife. And you don't cross Muhammad. So that's where this exchange happened. And I want to dig into the morality of Muhammad in this passage. When the apostle had consummated his marriage with Sophia, how long were you supposed to wait? What is the time you were supposed to wait before you consummated a marriage? 3 months. Did he wait 3 months? No. This is within a few days. Ayub guarded the apostle during the night, walking around his tent with a sword drawn. When the apostle saw him in the morning, he goes, what is this, O Ayub? He replied. The guy guarding his tent goes, I was afraid for you with this woman, for you have killed her father, her husband, her people. And she was lately an unbeliever. Likely she wasn't. She just claimed she was a believer. So I guarded you. But look at what Muhammad does. After setting fire to this woman's husband, the apostle laughed and thanked him for his concern. Is this a man of deep character toward his wife? Of course not. What if his wife had been through something hard? Is that the kind of character? Now think about you're a wife today to a Muslim. And he is the ultimate example of morality. And you see this as morality. What kind of does this help you think about? Let's go to the Quran. Men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in the husband's absent what Allah would have them guard. But these wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. And so here's the process. Tell them. If they don't listen, ignore them in bed. If they still are doing that, beat them. Quran 4:34, and again, this is just, I wanted to highlight different English versions so people understand this is not, I'm not picking a certain version. As for those whom you fear rebellion, admonish them, banish them, and scourge them. The Shakir version is beat them. Halim, then hit them. We go back to here. Let's hear what Muhammad's wife said. Aisha said that the lady came wearing a green veil and complained to her of her husband and showed her her green spot on her skin caused by a beating. It was the habit of the ladies to support one another. So when Muhammad came, Aisha said, I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing woman. what she's saying in this is even the pagans in this area were treated better than the believing woman of Mohammed. Look, her skin is greener than her clothes. Narrated Aisha. When I was with him, he struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. Ibn Majah, saying 1986. One night, Umar arranged a feast. When it was midnight, he got up and went toward his wife to beat her. I separated them both. When he went to bed, he said to me, preserve from me a thing that I heard from Muhammad. A man will not be taken to task for beating his wife. So here this person is questioned, what are you doing? And he said, you can't take me to task. I heard this straight from the perfect example, the perfect husband, the perfect prophet, the perfect father, Muhammad. Let's compare that to a biblical morality. Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Jesus Christ loves the church and gave himself for her. How are women viewed? They're made in the image of God. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created him, male and female. We see Solomon's wisdom in Proverbs 31. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Who laughs? She laughs at the time to come. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself. You see a totally different morality. Now, if those wives complain, now imagine you're kind of in this relationship. What is paradise for a Muslim man? What does paradise look like? We're going to learn about something called Ori women. These are kind of like special, they're not really angels, they're these special creations of heaven just for Muslim men. Now, imagine you're a wife and maybe you're complaining, you've been hit, you're Aisha. It says, no woman causes harm to her husband except that his wife from among the Ori. So these are these special kind of virgins of paradise. These are what they say. Do not harm him. May Allah ruin you. He is a guest with you, and he will soon leave you and come to us. So every Muslim wife has the thought that no matter how she treats her husband, waiting for her husband in paradise are two Ori women who are watching them saying, you are only a guest. He is going to spend eternity with us. Now, what is this? How is this recorded in the Quran? Indeed, the righteous will have salvation. But what is salvation? See, when we use a term like salvation, as a Christian, salvation is this understanding that I'm a sinner, that I do deserve justice. Jesus gave everything in order that I can have salvation. But listen to Islamic salvation. Private gardens, vineyards, young, full-bosomed women, those are the Oris, of equal age and an overflowing cup, never to hear any idle talk. They will never talk back or lying therein. So now you go into Friday night mosque, you open up the Quran to hear about what paradise is like, and this is what you hear. Imagine the freedom that comes from Christianity. Recorded in Quran, Surah 44, 52, 55, and 56. So we're seeing, and that is in addition to what I just had, the Quran makes sure that people understand the righteous will be in a secure place within gardens and spring, wearing fine silk and will marry them fair women with large, beautiful eyes, is roughly what those 4 verses said. Quran 55. They are reclining on beds whose lining are of silk, and the fruit of the 2 gardens is hanging low. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? In them are women limiting their glances, untouched before them by man or jinn. So these are women who will look nothing but at their husband. They've never been touched by another man or jinn. This is this kind of idea of perpetual virginity. Quran 56, 35 through 38. We have created them maidens of special creation and made them virgins, loving their husbands only, equal in age, for those on the right hand. Now think of Christianity's heaven. Now I want you to think that you're a woman in Islam. What does salvation look like? What does hell look like? The women of the fire, 99 out of 100, are women. I put an article. When you start talking, whether it's online or in person, what you're going to do is you're going to hear about how the prophet raised the status of women. It's an utter lie. And so I want you, now that you've kind of seen what Islam's most trusted sources say, this is, and I put the link in there in the notes, the story of the prophet's interaction with women, including his wives, daughters, and female companions, reflect his commitment to upholding their dignity, admiring their status of women, protecting their rights, from appointing a specific day for women to freely engage with him, to intervening in situations where women were mistreated or unfairly judged. The prophet demonstrates his unwavering support for gender equity. It's totally absurd. It does not match the Quran. It does not match the Sunnah. It's not embodied in Sharia law. Even today, a woman's testimony is worth so much less. This is pure deception, which leads me to deception in Islam. Most of the time when people are going to hear about deception in Islam, they're going to hear a term called taqiyya. And taqiyya is one, and really it's outside the scope of this lecture series to go into what all of them are. Beyond, I'm just going to touch on that often when people say deception and they use the broad heading of taqiyya, it's actually a little more nuanced than that. So tariya is to use an expression that has 2 meanings. One's that it's apparent to the listener, and one that's hidden, that the speaker intends. And so a silly little example of that, they don't celebrate Valentine's or Christmas. You might have a Muslim coworker and you might go, hey, happy Valentine's Day, and he'll go, best wishes. Now, it's not very serious, obviously, but underlying best wishes is him saying, I hope you become a Muslim. He is not going along and saying happy Valentine's Day back. And so that's just a soft form of what I'm talking about. There's maruna, it's pragmatic adaptability to achieve religious or ideological aims. Sometimes it's called strategic flexibility. It's outwardly adjusting behavior or alliance to serve a long-term ideological goal. So you hide true beliefs for a time to suit Islam. And we see this all the time. We see Islam joining the left. And I'm telling you, we're already seeing what happened with the left joining Islam. In England and in Europe, they use them as long as it's convenient, and then quickly the left is learning right now that they're meaningless to Islam once they have power. Kitman is concealment for strategy or safety. And so I want to give you real life examples of some of this deception. This was a flyer I was given in a library by Muslims. Now, this was the Ahmadiyya sect, so Sunni and Shia Muslims would reject this sect. It's actually who Nabil Qureshi, one of the books that I talked about, he was an Ahmadiyya. And so Muslims for life, they want to tell you how much kind of honor, how much they care. When you open it up, it says that we are against terrorism. And then they have a Quranic verse, and it says, we prescribe for the children of Israel that whosoever killed a person, and then they have 3 dots, it shall be as he killed all mankind. And who gave life to one, it shall be as if he had given life to all mankind. And that sounds beautiful. It sounds wonderful. Because that, in among itself, is a wonderful statement. Killing one is like killing all of humanity. Now, if you look at that, it says Quran 5:33, which is kind of funny because they have a typo. It's actually Quran 5:32. And so I've often talked about how little they actually read the Quran, and I thought this one was kind of funny because when you go to Quran 5:32, it's what it is. And so we read, we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person, it would be as if he slew the whole people. But what did those 3 dots contain? They're counting on the fact you're not going to read something in context. When we read it in context, it says, on that account, we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person, unless it was for murder or for spreading mischief in the land. What is spreading mischief in the land? That's saying something against Islam. So you can slay someone if they spread mischief. Now, if we go back and say, well, what is it that they're talking about? It's terrorism. They're literally removing the part where it gives them okay in the Quran to kill people for spreading mischief. Is that intentional or is that unintentional? That is deception. But let's look at a little bigger context. Then, and it's going to seem like we're hammering on the same point, this is the very next verse. That was 32, slay those who have mischief. So 33 and 34. Then although there came to them our messengers with the clear signs, yet after that many of them continued to commit excesses in the land. The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and Muhammad and strive with might and main for mischief through the land. Those are people who aren't in war, but they're just speaking against him. What is the punishment? From the exact same thing that says Muslims for life is execution or crucifixion or cutting off of the hands and feet from opposite sides or exile from the land. Now, does that sound like that same beautiful verse? Of course not. This is pure deception. Yet, I don't know how many times I have been quoted Quran 5:32. And I always smile and I say the same thing. Oh, that's wonderful. Do you have a Quran? Can I read it in the Quran app? And I will tell you, almost none of them have ever actually read it in English. And I say, what is spreading mischief? And they're like, I didn't know that was in there. But they're being lied to. This one was kind of funny because, well, it's kind of funny, sad. A couple of years ago, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints came out with a pamphlet of kind of showing the similarities between Islam and Mormonism, which kind of surprised me they did that. But within it, it says, love for God and humanity. Muslims and Latter-day Saints believe that by loving God and all humankind, peace and goodness will ultimately prevail. They devote their lives to living and teaching people these principles. The Quran teaches Muslim, whoever saves a life, it was as if they saved all of humanity. But at least they got the reference right. Is that what the Quran teaches? No. Who in the LDS church even proofread that? I guarantee you no one even looked that up. They wouldn't have put that in the document. You have mudarat, it's concealment of intention from people who you dislike. It's to be diplomatic. And again, we're just going to kind of hone in on this idea of taqiyya. This is deliberate concealment of faith or pretending conformity to advance Islam. This can involve intentionally deceiving what Islam teaches in order to gain a foothold. Often you'll have Sunni Muslims will say, well, it's a Shia concept. Technically, it kind of started as a Shia concept, but it applies universally. If we turn to Quran, Surah 16, ayah, or verse 106, whoever disbelieves in Allah after his belief, except for one who is forced to renounce his religion, while his heart is secured in faith. So they have absolutely no problem renouncing their faith, as long as their intention, their heart is that they still believe it. But those who willingly open their breast to disbelief, upon them is the wrath of Allah, and for them is a great punishment. So this establishes there are circumstances that can compel a Muslim to lie. Let not the believers, Muslims, take for friends or helpers unbelievers rather than believers. If they do that, in nothing there will be help from Allah, except by way of precaution, that ye may guard yourselves from them. So, yeah, you can take friends if it suits you. If it helps you guard yourself from it. This is Quran chapter 3. Ibn Kathir is a kind of exegete, an expert, a commentator, to use that type of term. On this, he says, Allah said next, unless you indeed fear a danger from them, meaning, except those believers who in some areas or times fear for their safety from the disbelievers. In this case, such Muslims, believers, are allowed to show friendship to the disbelievers outwardly, but never inwardly. For instance, Imam Bukhari recorded that Abu said, we smile in the face of some people, though our hearts curse them. So this is Bukhari and Al-Hasan. The taqiyya is allowed until the day of resurrection. Deception is allowed. We see this, we covered this idea of maker deception. Allah is the best of schemers. God schemes faster. Quran 3 and the Quran 10. Mohammad, this is recorded again in Bukhari. War is deceit. When we look at why he was saying that, in this context, this man and his 30 unarmed men were guaranteed safe passage by Muhammad's men. But they're slaughtered. And that's permissible. So here you have people asking for safe passage, but they weren't. Bukhari records, he who makes peace with the people by inventing a good information or saying good things is not a liar. So lying is permitted when the ends justify the means. Now, if somebody says something about Islam that they don't want people to know, one who exposes something from our religion is like one who intentionally kills us. You belong to a religion that whosoever conceals it, Allah will honor him. And whoever reveals it, Allah will disgrace him. So you can hide and not. So let's compare that again now. We've seen kind of the treatment of women. Now let's look at the basics of lying. What does the Bible have to say about this? And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Speak the truth to one another. Render in your gates judgments that are true, and make for peace. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, and that would be our example. We speak the truth because Jesus spoke the truth. We speak the truth, we hate deception because Jesus literally said, I am the truth. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord, Elohim, Yahweh, abhors bloodthirsty and deceitful men. Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor. And this is recorded in John chapter 8. You are of the father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and has nothing to do with the truth. Because there is no truth in him, when he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Jesus warns. Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. He wrote this over 600 years before one of the most obvious false prophets that the world has ever known was deceiving people. This deception also is how you see the stages of violence in Islam. Stage one is when Muslims are outnumbered. We read This is the entire chapter of 109. Say, O you unbelievers, I do not serve that which you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve. Nor am I going to serve that which you serve, nor are you going to serve him who I serve. So this is pointing out, you have your beliefs, I have my beliefs. That's what this is. You shall have your religion, and I shall have my religion. And you'll see this quoted. Islam does not compel, you'll hear. But they'll be deceitful about abrogating verses. Because this sounds wonderful. What happens when Muslims are strong enough to fight? Permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they are oppressed. And most surely Allah is well able to assist them. Those who have been expelled from their homes without a just cause, except they say, our Lord is Allah. And so you see a later verse, permission is fight to give them. We see this abrogated again to a later, when Muslims are the majority. Fight those who believe not in Allah or the last day. That sure sounds a whole lot different than the 109th surah. This, we stop saying you have your religion, I have my religion now. Fight those who do not believe in Allah in the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Allah and Muhammad, nor acknowledge Islam from among the people of the book, that would be Christians, until they pay a tax, it's called the jizya, with submission and feel themselves subdued. So if you're not a person of the book, you can be killed. Those who will be subdued can just pay a tax. And let's look at some of this violence. Is this a one-off, or is this something that's a little bit more common? The honorable ayah, that's the chapter, was revealed with the order to fight the people of the book. That's the 9th ayah I just read. After the pagans were defeated, the people entered Allah's region in large numbers, and the Arabian Peninsula was secured under the Muslims' control. Allah commanded his messenger to fight the people of the scripture, Jews and Christians, on the 9th year, and he prepared his army to fight the Romans and called the people to jihad, announcing his intent and destination. Therefore, all people of the world should be called to Islam. If any one of them refuses to do so or refuses to pay the tax, they should be fought until they are killed. And so this is Ibn Kathir, again, the commentator. Imam Bukhari records Muslims saying, I have been ordered to fight the people till they say none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And then we see the Shahada. This is Imam Muslim, I have been commanded to fight against the people so long as they do not declare that there is no God but Allah. Quran, chapter 3, verse 28. Let not the believers take disbelievers for their friends. In preference to believers. Whoso doeth that has no connection with Allah, unless it be that ye but guard yourselves against them. So you can have friends, but you got to guard yourself against them, taking as it were security. Allah biddeth you beware only of himself. Unto Allah is the journeying. Quran chapter 47. Be not weary and faint-hearted, crying for peace when you should be the uppermost. So here this is calling out and saying, no, you have to keep going. Can Muslims ask for peace? If the disbelievers are considered more powerful and numerous than Muslims, then the imam may decide to hold a treaty if he judges that it benefits Muslims. But not if it doesn't. Again, in Bukhari, a man came to Allah's messenger and said, guide me to such a deed that equals jihad, fighting for Islam. Muhammad replied, I do not find such a deed. Narrated, Anas bin Malik, the prophet said, nobody who dies, and I want you really to listen to this, and finds good from Allah in the hereafter. Now, we learned about paradise, right? So this is someone who dies in the sake of it. They have their Ori wives. They have the silk, etc. In the hereafter would want to come back to this world, even if he were given the whole world and whatever's in it. That's how wonderful it's going to be in paradise. Except the martyr, who on seeing the superiority of martyrdom would like to come back to the world and get killed again in Allah's cause. This is straight from Islam's most trusted sources. That is how high they look at martyrdom. The prophet said, "By him in whose hands my soul is, I would love to be martyred in Allah's cause, and then come back to life, and then get martyred, then come back to life again, then get martyred, and then come back to life again, and then get martyred." This is the best example. Bukhari reports, if you leave Islam, you must be killed. Apostates should be killed. Muslims kill apostates, they get a special reward in heaven. I don't have time to go into all those, but let's look at what happens when you criticize Muhammad. A blind man had a slave mother who used to abuse the prophet and disparage him. The blind man forbade her, but she did not stop. He rebuked her. She didn't give up her habit. One night, she began to slander the prophet and abuse him. Now, you have to understand, the abuse that's being accused is from the Islamic sources. She probably had someone killed that she knew, and she was not going to give up. She was like, this guy is not good. One night, she began to slander the prophet and abuse him. So he took a dagger and placed it in her belly, pressed it, and killed her. A child who came between her legs was smeared with blood. When the morning came, the prophet was informed about it. Thereupon the prophet said, "O be witness, no retaliation is payable for her blood." So are they guilty of, if someone criticizes the prophet, are they guilty for killing somebody who criticizes the prophet? No. And so this is why when we see somebody like Salman Rushdie who criticizes the prophet, they can issue a fatwa. Because Muhammad is the perfect exemplar, they have no problem killing anyone. You saw what happened in France. If you pay attention to the news, the magazine printed some unsavory pictures about Muhammad, and they went in and murdered people. A Jewess used to abuse the prophet and disparage him. A man strangled her until he died. The apostle Muhammad declared that no recompense was payable for her blood. This one is kind of a sad story, but we'll talk about Abu and Asma. Abu is a very old man. Some of the sources, they really don't know the age, but he could be over 100. I kind of doubt it, but he composed some verses of poetry chiding Muhammad. The apostle said, "Who will deal with this rascal for me?" And so one of his men went forward and killed this old man. He could not take any criticism. He had very, very thin skin. And that's what we see even today. So this old man has died. So when Abu had been killed, Asma displayed disaffection, obviously. So blaming Islam and its followers, she said, "I despise Auf." This is the man who actually killed Abu. "You obey a stranger who is not yours. Do you expect good for him after the killing of your chiefs?" And so she's going, "What are you doing killing for Islam? This man was 100 years old." So what does Muhammad then do to her? When the apostle heard what Asma had said, he said, "Who will rid me of Marwan's daughter?" That's her. This man who was with Muhammad heard him, and that very night he went to her house and killed her. In the morning, he came to the apostle and told him what he had done. Muhammad said, "You have helped God and his apostle." When he asked if he would have to bear any evil consequences, now you have to understand, even this pagan society knew that you were not supposed to murder people for criticizing. He knew there's probably going to be a consequence. But this life of this woman meant so little. Muhammad goes, 2 goats won't butt their heads about it. So he went back to his people. Nobody's going to care. That's another expression for it. And here's another one. Allah's apostles said, "Who is willing to kill Ka'b, who has hurt Allah and his apostles?" This is, again, not actually hurt him. Thereupon, this is a different Muhammad, got up and saying, "O Allah's apostle, Would you like that I kill him? The prophet said, yes, I would. Then allow me to lie, to say a false thing and deceive him. The prophet said, you may say it. When he came down, he was holding his cloak under his arm. Then he said to him, we sense that you have a very fine smell. So he calls out to this man he's going to kill. He goes, wow, you smell good. He said, yes, you may smell. So he smells his head. Then he said, allow me to smell your head again. Then he held his head fast and said to his companions, do your job. And they killed him. So within Islam, the perfect exemplar, you are allowed to lie, to have deceit in order to kill someone. Now let's go back to the Quran. And Allah may test or purify the believers from sins and destroy disbelievers. Do you think that you will enter paradise before Allah tests of you who fought in his cause and also tests those who are steadfast? Part of this testing is whether or not you will stand up to unbelievers. Quran 3:151, we shall cast terror into the heart of those who disbelieve. But I thought that brochure said no terror, no terrorism. Have they not read Quran 3:151? Where it specifically says we cast terror into the hearts? Here's another story. I call this Mohammad takes a bath. When the prophet returned from the Battle of Trench, he laid down his arms and he took a bath. So, is this someone who's being attacked? No, he's literally just taking a bath. There happens to be another village. And he said, Gabriel came to him and said, have you laid down your arms? By Allah, we, the angels, have not laid ours down. Go to them. The prophet said, where do I go? So these are not people attacking Muhammad. Gabriel said, toward this side, and he pointed toward this village. So the prophet went out to them. The Muslims then, they have a short siege on the town. This is not a powerful town. And they have an ally, his name's Said, and he goes to them because they're being sieged, and they're like, we give up. We're not fighting. And so they say, can Said offer terms? Maybe we have to pay. Maybe we get, who knows? And so we pick up the story in their most trusted sources. In Ibn Ishaq, page 464, Said said, then I give judgment that the men should be killed. The apostle said to Said, now I don't even know why he would say anything else being with Muhammad. You have given the judgment of Allah above the seven heavens. Then they surrendered and the apostle confined them into Medina. So the men give up under pretense that Said is giving them terms. But let's see what he does. Then the prophet ordered that every male whose pubic hair had appeared, that means that they were of age, so whenever that happened, should be killed, and those who had not should be spared. So they had to undress. Then the apostle went out to the market of Medina and dug trenches. It has another word there. Then he sent for them and struck off their heads in the trenches as they were brought out to him in batches. There were 600 to 700 in all. Though some put, and this is not me, this is Ibn Ishaq, some put the figure as high as 800 to 900. This went on until the apostle made an end of them. So he's in a bath. He says, you should go to this village, lines up all the boys, kills them all. Muhammad sends Muslims to attack a village. They take some prisoners. This one is just completely insane. This lady, Kirfa, is described as a very old woman. It is ordered to kill her by putting a rope, it says Pope, but a rope to her two legs and to two camels and driving them until they rent her in two. So one rope was tied to one leg, one was to the other. All for basically criticizing it to make a point. Then they brought her daughter and she's presented to one of the fighters, and she bare him a son. We read in the Quran 69, and this is how Muhammad dies. And it's kind of, as I wrap up this series, it's interesting often when you look at what Muhammad said and you look kind of what happened. In Quran 69, it says, he's defending the fact that people are saying, you're making up Islam. And so he says that Allah gives him this revelation. And if he had fabricated against us, Allah, some of the sayings, we would have seized him by the right hand and we would have cut his aorta. So Muhammad says, my aorta will be cut if I'm making this up. That was one of the proofs he gave in Quran chapter 69. Foolishly, what he does is he destroys this village, decimates the men, and he literally asks a Jewish woman to cook for him. And she poisons him. The least shocking thing ever. And this is what Imam Bukhari records. The Prophet, in his ailment in which he died, ultimately he dies. "O Aisha, I still feel pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar. And at that time, I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." And so I often wonder how many of them know that the Quran says he would have his aorta cut, and then he says it. But I want to end this because the defining kind of thing of these Do We Agree series is looking at, quite simply, do we agree? Do we worship the same God? You'll notice I don't even like to use, when it says Allah, I don't like to use the English version of that God because it conjures up two different things. The Christian God couldn't be further from the God of Islam. Let's look at Christians are called Christians. It was an insult that was given to Christians who were living in Turkey. They called them Little Christ. And that's where it started. It started in Antioch. So let's compare the sayings of Jesus and Muhammad. Muhammad says, I have been commanded to fight against the people till they testify of Muhammad's message. Jesus says, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. Muhammad permitted lying. Jesus said, you shall not bear false witness. Don't lie. Muhammad, we saw, owned and traded black slaves. And just slaves, sex slaves. Jesus neither owned nor traded slaves. We just read he beheaded, 800 Jewish men and boys. Jesus beheaded no one. Muhammad murdered those who insulted him. Jesus preached forgiveness over and over again. Muhammad said, if anyone transgresses the prohibition against you, transgress ye likewise against him. Quran chapter 2. Jesus said, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Muhammad said, jihad, or fighting in the way of Allah, elevates one position in paradise by 100-fold. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for those will be called the sons of God. Muhammad married 13 wives and kept sex slaves. Jesus was celibate, encouraged virtue. He said, do not look on a woman with lust. Muhammad slept with a 9-year-old child, fantasized about wearing an infant. Jesus protected children. He never had a sensual relationship with a child. Muhammad ordered the murder of women. Jesus never harmed women. Muhammad said, O ye who believe, fight those of the unbelievers. Jesus said, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. He killed captives. Muhammad killed captives taken in battle. Jesus never took captives. He never killed anyone. Muhammad encouraged his men to rape and enslaved women. Jesus never encouraged that. He never enslaved women. Muhammad demanded captured slaves and 1/5 of all other loot taken in war for himself. Jesus said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. Muhammad said, what are the greatest commandments? Belief in Allah and fighting in his cause. Jesus said, love your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Muhammad demanded the best for himself, even from his followers, taking the most beautiful sex slaves and even his adopted son's wife. He died very wealthy. Jesus demands nothing for himself. He died without possessions. Muhammad advocated crucifying others. Jesus was crucified. Muhammad, according to his followers, had others give lives for him. According to his followers, Jesus gave his life for his followers. Muhammad said, "Oh, you who believe, do not take my enemy and your enemy for friends. Would you offer them love while they deny what has come to you of the truth? O ye who believe, take not the Jews and Christians for friends." Jesus says, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you." Muhammad said, "O you who have believed, do not ask about the things which, if they are shown to you, will distress you. A people asked such questions before you, then they became thereby disbelievers." Don't question. What is encouraged of Christians? "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be ready to give an answer for everyone who asks, to give the reason for the hope that's within you. But do it with gentleness and respect." As Christians, we welcome questions. Muhammad, "Obey Allah and the messenger, and if they turn away, Allah loves not disbelievers. Lo, he loves not the disbelievers in his guidance." And as we close, I want to end with this thought from John 3:16. God so loved. When did he love? It says God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were unbelievers, while we were disbelievers. And therein lies one of the fundamental differences. Jesus loved those who didn't believe.